Welcome back to another episode of the What We're Watching podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jenny, and today we're talking about Letters to Juliet.
Another fun summer movie that you guys suggested. I am so glad that we watched this one again. It was so cute.
It was so cute, and again, I have never seen it. I guess we should just be prepared for that. If it's a 2010s movie, I have not seen it. It was really cute. I really, really enjoyed it.
I forgot how much I liked this movie. I think I was confusing it with Dear John, the Amanda Seyfried Channing Tatum movie.
Yes.
And this one is so much more lighthearted. And I liked it a lot.
I haven't seen Dear John either, but I definitely always got the two mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I was expecting this movie to be about, but it definitely wasn't this. And I'm very into this storyline.
I had completely forgotten the entire plot. So I think I watched this one time when it came out, so I'm happy that we got to revisit it. It was good. Well, before we get into it, if you guys have been enjoying the podcast, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and a good review.
It really helps the podcast out a lot, and we really appreciate it. We love hearing from you guys, too.
So the logline for this movie is, while visiting Verona, Italy with her busy fiancé, a young woman named Sophie visits a wall where the heartbroken leave notes to Shakespeare's tragic heroine, Juliet Capulet. Finding one such letter from 1957, Sophie decides to write to its now elderly author, Claire. Inspired by Sophie's actions, Claire sets out to find her long-lost lover, accompanied by her disapproving grandson and Sophie.
So cute.
So cute.
I loved everything about this movie.
I thought this movie was great because it was so lighthearted and such an easy, cute watch. If you're just looking for cutesy, rom-com, easy to watch, not that long, not super heavy, this is a good one.
Completely agree. So like we said, this movie came out in 2010, and it's based on a nonfiction book called Letters to Juliet, which is about the real phenomenon where people write to Shakespeare's character Juliet with the hope that she'll bring them love and happiness. Did you know this was a thing?
No. I thought this was made up for this movie. I
So
thought they were
did I.
making it up, or that maybe this wall existed, but I had no idea that people write letters to Juliet.
I was like, what a cute idea when I was watching the movie and I was all enthralled in this romance. Yeah, it's real. And the book has a lot of real letters in it, and there really is a Juliet club filled with people who write back.
That's cool. Oh, I love that.
Should we do it?
Maybe.
You can actually write to Juliet in Verona even if you don't go visit there. They have a mailing address, and you can also just go on their website and email them too, and you'll get an even quicker reply, they say. And their website is julietclub.com/en, and I'll leave it in the podcast description so you guys can go to it.
Yay, let's all write to Juliet.
Can we?
Just get an influx.
If you guys do, you should let us know.
Yeah, please let us know.
They get all these letters and they're like, what is What We're Watching podcast? And if you want to be a secretary of Juliet for a day or longer and respond to letters yourself, you can even volunteer to do that.
Cool. Oh, I love this. I had no idea this was a real thing.
Me neither. It's adorable.
How cute.
And of course, it inspired some cute romance.
I can see how somebody read this book and said, oh my gosh, we have to do a movie based on this concept in Verona.
Yeah.
Totally.
Letters to Juliet was directed by Gary Winnick, who is the director of 13 Going on 30, Bride Wars, and Charlotte's Web. And we did talk about him in the 13 Going on 30 episode, and we talked about how the cast loved working with him. And this is sad, but Letters to Juliet was his last movie before he passed away.
Wow. I love knowing that this was one of his movies because, like you said, we talked about how much everybody loved working with him. That just makes me feel good. I always feel so warm and fuzzy when I feel like the cast had a really good time making it when it's a movie that we also liked. And I love 13 Going on 30 and Bride Wars.
And this one has a similar vibe, right? You can tell that the cast is really into it and having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're taking it very seriously. And I don't know, I feel like it's rare to find that in a romance movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, should we talk about the cast?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's start by talking about Amanda Seyfried, who plays Sophie.
You guys know her. We've talked about her a million times already. But she's in Mean Girls, Mamma Mia, Jennifer's Body, Les Mis, Dear John, The Dropout. And this will be the 4th episode we've covered her in. And I think that might be a record.
That is a record. That's definitely a record.
We thought when we started this podcast that Anne Hathaway was our girl that we were going to talk about all the time. But it's Amanda Seyfried.
It is. It really is. We just talked a lot about her in Mamma Mia and kind of her like rise to fame. And then I know we talked a lot about her personal life with Shannon from Fluently Forward in the Jennifer's Body episode. So if you guys want to know more about her personally, go to those.
I did have a hard time watching this movie after recently watching Mamma Mia, where her name is Sophie, and her name is Sophie in this too.
I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, another like summery aesthetic movie in Europe where she's playing a Sophie with long blonde hair.
I kind of love it.
I do too.
In this movie, Amanda works alongside Vanessa Redgrave, who is a really famous actress, and she played Claire. I could imagine that would be kind of intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
But Amanda said that any intimidation working with her went away as soon as she started because she said Vanessa is so present and she has an essence that you want to be around. And Amanda said she felt like a peer instead of someone who is up here, which I thought was cute.
That's really cute. Oh, I love that. Okay, should we talk about Christopher Egan, who plays Charlie?
Yeah, I've never seen him in anything else. Have you?
No, I don't think I've seen him ever again, but I wish I had. I liked him in this.
Yeah, I liked him in this too. He's an Australian actor. His first film role was in Aragon, but he doesn't play Aragon. He plays Aragon's cousin.
Okay.
He did a lot of theater and modeling before that, and this was his biggest role as far as I could tell.
Okay. I wonder if he like went back to theater then maybe, and that's why we haven't seen him.
Maybe.
Also, I'm so surprised he's Australian.
I know. I kind of didn't catch that because he's English in this, right?
Yeah, I didn't catch it at all. I pride myself on being able to tell when people are putting on accents because they'll always slip up with like certain sounds.
Yeah.
And I had no idea with this one.
I have a really hard time between Australian and English accents. So for me, I wouldn't have known anyway. But that's pretty impressive that you noticed the difference.
Oh, thank you. I am sure you're right. I'm sure because he was like speaking in an English accent, I would have never caught it because I don't hear that as much, obviously.
Cool, though. And in his Instagram bio, it says that he's a writer, too. So maybe he's doing that more nowadays. I don't know.
Cool.
And he said it was his dream to film in Italy, and they got to shoot in order, like in the movie's order. So he felt like they were actually going on that road trip that they went on in the movie. Because they kind of did.
Fun. That's really fun. Wow, everything about this I feel like is just confirming that they all had such a good experience.
Yeah, I love that.
Like I want to do it.
I wonder how long it took them to film. I feel like probably not long. Probably just a couple months.
Yeah, probably a couple months. Okay, next we have Gael Garcia Bernal.
He plays Victor, Sophie's fiance. He's a Mexican actor and filmmaker, and he's known for The Motorcycle Diaries, Babel, Old, and Coco. He voices Hector. I had no idea.
I had no idea.
That's the skeleton, if you haven't seen it in a long time. And he's been in tons of other things, and in 2020, he was ranked one of the 25 greatest actors of the 21st century by the New York Times.
Whoa.
Which is wild, because I feel like I haven't really seen him in much.
No, when I was watching this, he was like Christopher to me, because I had never seen him before, and I don't think I ever saw him again after. But I guess knowing that he does more voice acting makes sense.
Yeah. And he's been acting since he was a baby and was in a lot of telenovelas in his teens.
Oh, fun.
I could see him being a soap opera guy.
Totally.
It makes sense.
He's very expressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like I remember him in this movie, and that could just be his character, but like talking with his hands and like talking very emotionally, you know?
What did you think of his character?
Ugh, hate. I have so many feelings. Why? What did you think?
I mean, I didn't like him and he was very frustrating, but at the same time, he's kind of endearing, just not for her, and they're not a good match.
Agree.
I think maybe the actor is likable, and so that made me think that he was likable as well.
It was a really good casting because I completely believed that Sophie, the character, like fell in love with him for like his passion and his excitement and his like connectedness when he wants to be and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But that they just sort of like fell apart over time and this like resentment started growing, which I think is really common in a lot of serious long-term relationships. So I thought it was a very relatable story, which is what made me hate him.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that.
Okay, then we have the Vanessa Redgrave who plays Claire.
She's a member of the Redgrave family of actors, and she's acted in several things with her family. They're a very famous acting family. She was in Camelot, the original Murder on the Orient Express, Mary Queen of Scots, Atonement, and Girl Interrupted. But many, many, many more because she's been acting in movies since 1958. And this I didn't know, and now everything is connecting. She's Natasha Richardson's mom. That's the mom from The Parent Trap, if you guys don't remember.
I'm shook.
And do you remember in the Parent Trap episode, we were like, oh yeah, Natasha Richardson, she was part of the Redgrave family, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. And here we go, it's connected.
Wow. Oh, I love that now we've talked about both of them.
Yeah, me too. Me too. What's sad to me is that Natasha passed away not long before they started filming Letters to Juliet, if I'm calculating that correctly.
That's really hard.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing a project after your daughter passes away tragically like that.
Yeah, it makes me feel like there's probably so much more underlying emotion in the scenes where Claire becomes very like motherly towards Sophie.
Yeah.
Claire, just so you guys know, is Charlie's grandmother in the movie. We find out that she raised Charlie, so she's very much a mother figure to him, and then also sort of becomes one throughout the movie to Sophie, Amanda Seyfried. So that is very sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last but not least, we have Franco Nero, who plays Lorenzo Bartolini.
He's an Italian producer, director, and actor. He was in a lot of movies in the 60s and 70s, and he's still acting. And he was the original Django, which I didn't know.
Oh, wow.
He and Vanessa Redgrave met when they were very young on the set of Camelot in 1966, and they had a son together in 1969, separated, and then got back together in 2006.
Shut up.
They're still married.
Shut up. Guys, we're going to talk about this, but that is so close to the plot of this movie. And he is the love interest of Claire, the like grandma mother figure. I'm sorry. I'm like having a moment. I was going to say how crazy that they met on the set of Camelot, because that's also like this like old English story, which reminds me of Shakespeare, i.e. Letters to Juliet. But the fact that they then dated, had a son, separated, got back together, how many years later is that?
40?
40 years later, which is almost the same timing. It's 50 in the movie. And they're still married. I wish I knew this before I watched it. Okay, you guys, now that you know this, need to go watch it because you'll have such a different, just like understanding of those two. That's so cute.
Yeah, I looked this up afterwards, and when I found this out, I was just so excited. What a fun fact. I don't know why I didn't know that.
I had no idea. I just honestly don't know much about the Redgrave family, but now we know more.
I know, isn't that so cute? Back to Natasha Richardson. Franco actually walked her down the aisle when she married Liam Neeson, because he's her stepdad, and her father had passed away a few years prior.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I need to look up those pictures. I wonder if there's pictures from that wedding.
Oh, there probably is, because they're both very famous.
If I can find good ones, I'll post them on our Instagram.
Yay. Well, I feel like that was like a jam-packed info session on the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Should we get into the movie?
Let's do it. When the movie opens, we see the opening credits playing over this series of romantic paintings and photographs and portraits and sculptures. It's like a lot of famous artwork that shows couples. And You Got Me by Colby Calais is playing. And if that does not set the vibe for like 2010's cutesy rom-com, I don't know what could. And then we see New York City. And in New York, we see Sophie Hall, played by Amanda Seyfried, who's walking through New York, and she picks up her phone. And while she's on the phone, we figure out that she's a fact checker for The New Yorker, and she's trying to find a source for an article, and she does. So she's good at her job.
Back at the office, we find out Sophie is going on a pre-honeymoon to Verona, since it's her and her fiancé's last chance to spend time together on vacation before his restaurant opens. Sophie's coworker tells her she can't let her fiancé pay attention to anything but her while they're out of town, which will come back.
Mm-hmm. Which, fun fact, I'm pretty sure Sophie's coworker that like talks to her here and there throughout the movie is Jenna Rank's assistant from 13 Going on 30.
Yeah, you're right, which makes sense now because same director.
They must have liked her. That's fun.
I love that.
So then Sophie stops by her fiancé Victor's restaurant, and he makes her try a bunch of the noodles that he's making, and he says that he thinks he's creating a masterpiece. So like immediately we get the vibe that he's super into his work. It's really important to him, and it's like he's very passionate about it. We can tell he's super excited about the restaurant opening coming up, and he's very distracted walking around the restaurant while she's trying to talk to him. And she even, during their conversation, makes a comment about how he hasn't even packed for the trip yet.
Yikes.
Yeah, you guys get the vibes of what's going on, where she's like all about the wedding and the trip and he's all about work and is like, yeah, I'll pack whenever.
You know when you are watching on Amazon Prime and sometimes when you pause it, a fun fact will come up?
Yeah.
It said in this scene that a lot of the noodles were rubber bands. And then I was looking really closely and you can kind of tell.
Oh, you guys can't see me, but my jaw just dropped open. I'm going to go back and watch that scene so I see if I can tell.
I figured that makes sense, though, that they would use rubber bands and not actually cook that many noodles.
Totally.
But I don't know why my brain never thinks about that stuff.
No, never.
Then we see Verona, and it's beautiful. We see shots of the architecture, the people, and the beautiful squares. And Sophie is walking around alone, and then she sees Victor on their balcony on the phone. He yells, "Wherefore art thou, sweet Sophia?" Then he tells her they need to go to a winery to check out a supplier for his restaurant, which is exactly what she wants to be doing on this vacation.
On what's supposed to be their honeymoon.
Yeah.
And then the whole time they're at the winery, Victor and the guide are speaking Italian to each other, so Sophie has no idea what they're saying, and we can tell she's just, like, bored and checked out. And then after they leave the vineyard, they go to a cheese manufacturer, an olive oil farm, and a few other stops, which, like, see this montage of, like, her getting dragged on all these errands. And then back in the car, Sophie talks about all the things that she really wants to do in Italy, and Victor is like, oh, yeah, of course, we'll get to it.
Then Victor gets off the phone and says he wants them to go 120 kilometers away to a truffle forest. And Sophie gets upset, rightfully so, and Victor agrees they can leave, but on the drive out, Sophie suggests that Victor goes to see the truffles alone so that she can go sightseeing. And he says it's a win-win. But we know that's not a win-win.
No. So then we see Sophie back in Verona walking around by herself, and she comes across this beautiful, like, brick square, and it's filled with all of these people writing letters and, like, reciting Shakespeare, and I think there's some people, like, up on a balcony. And then in the center of the square is a giant wall covered in letters. And Sophie, like, hangs out here. She's just mesmerized by everything that's happening. And at the end of the day, a woman comes by and collects all the letters into one basket. Sophie follows her into this restaurant where the woman holding the basket walks upstairs with a group of other people. So Sophie's obviously intrigued by what she's doing.
Upstairs, the women sit at a table and they distribute the letters. Sophie follows and she asks the woman why she collected the letters. And the woman says, you're a writer. Sophie sheepishly admits that she is, and I love this 2000s romance trope of someone working in New York and wanting to be a writer.
Totally.
And the woman who collected the letters is named Isabella, and she explains that the letters are all addressed to Juliet, and they respond to every letter. And Sophie says, "You're all Juliet."
Then Isabella's mom comes in, and we find out that she's, like, the chef at this restaurant that they're using as their, like, headquarters of the secretaries of Juliet. And she offers all of them food, and she gets offended when Sophie says that she actually has to leave. But then when Sophie's like, oh, well, I have to leave to meet my fiancé, everyone's like, oh, fiancé. And so Isabella's mother ends up giving her desserts to go to bring back to Victor.
Back at the hotel, Sophie tells Victor about her day and that she met the secretaries of Juliet. She explains that they work for the city of Verona, and as she's talking, Victor interrupts her to ask about the dessert. And we can tell he's preoccupied and not listening, which is just a theme throughout every scene we see him in. It's very annoying. And when he tastes the dessert, he freaks out.
So then the next day, Sophie takes Victor to Isabella and her mom at that same restaurant, and Isabella's mom, Angelina, offers to teach Victor some of her secrets. And Sophie is obviously disappointed because they were actually supposed to go to Lake Garda together that day, which was one of the things on Sophie's lists. But Victor is, like, insistent that he has to, like, stay to learn these secrets because, like, what an incredible experience. So Isabella offers to let Sophie help her for the day.
It is annoying that Victor kind of co-opted this awesome experience that Sophie had that was her own story, and then he, like, I don't know, makes it about him somehow. It sucks.
I feel like it's happened with the whole trip. I believe the trip was supposed to be, like, their honeymoon, but then it ended up being, like, a sourcing trip for him, which it didn't seem like it was intended to be that, so it was just, frustrating.
Yeah, it seems like that's just all he cares about, so it sucks. So Isabella and Sophie mail the responses, and as they're walking, Isabella asks why Sophie doesn't wear an engagement ring. And Sophie says, "That's on me. He was so busy with the restaurant, I didn't want him to worry about it." And Isabella says, "Still, a girl should have a ring."
It actually was not until here that I was like, oh, this is bad. I kind of, up until here, was, like, almost making excuses for him where I'm like, it's really annoying, but he has this like big thing going on. You can tell he does really love Sophie, and you can tell there is something there. And she was getting actively upset and like expressing that to him until this. And when she was like, oh, it's my fault that I don't have an engagement ring, I was like, oh no. Oh, girl.
And it'd be so different if she was like the daughter and father of the bride. And she's like, yeah, we just picked up a ring from a market. You know, it cost $10 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like, oh, he kind of forgot about the ring and it's on me. I just didn't want to bother him with it.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. After Sophie and Isabella mail their responses, they go back to the wall to collect more letters. And Sophie finds an extremely old letter stuck behind one of the bricks in the wall. And she finds out that it was written by Claire, who was a heartbroken woman from London. And Sophie says she has to be the one to respond. And so she does. The ladies like all kind of look at each other like, okay, I guess you can. And I thought this was kind of funny because they're back at the restaurant now and everyone's writing their responses. And the ladies are all up late writing. But then Sophie is still the last one to finish, even though Sophie is only responding to this one letter. So it's just taken her hours. But then she puts the original old letter in the envelope with her response and she seals it and sends it off.
I like that she did that to kind of give that letter back to Claire, but also remind her because she doesn't know where Claire is or if she even, still lives in the area.
Totally.
At the hotel, Sophie tells Victor she had the most amazing day, and Victor says she should spend more time with the secretaries of Juliet because he just got invited to an exclusive wine auction, which will take 1 to 2 days. He's so annoying.
Eye roll.
I stand by what I said. I think the actor is very charming, and I think his charisma is kind of contagious. But yeah, he sucks for this.
Yeah, we're not representing like the fullness of his personality in this because it just feels less important.
Yeah. It's not important. He treats her like trash.
Yeah. So the next morning, Sophie says goodbye to Victor as he drives away to go to the wine auction, and she spends the whole day alone, just sightseeing in Verona.
And then she's back with the secretaries, and as they're writing, an Englishman comes into the room and asks who wrote a letter to his grandmother, Claire. Sophie admits that she did. He pulls her aside and asks what she was thinking, and he's super mad that she referred to his grandmother's Italian lover, Lorenzo, as her true love. And we get the impression here that Claire definitely didn't marry the Italian man. And then Sophie and the Englishman, Charlie, bicker, and Sophie finds out that Charlie is in Verona with his grandmother because she got the letter and decided to come back to find Lorenzo.
Cute.
Very sweet.
Yeah, you can tell Charlie's like very defensive of his family, where he's like,
of course.
What are you doing getting involved in this? Which, fair. I would probably feel the same.
But also, then you can tell she just has all this hope all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Yeah.
So when Sophie sees Claire and Charlie staring at the Juliet letter wall, she is like, I have to introduce myself. So she walks up to them. As they're talking, Claire says that she knows Charlie doesn't approve of their trip, quote, which makes it all the more fun. I love Claire. Claire is like the most fun ever. I just think she's amazing.
Yeah.
And then Claire invites Sophie for a glass of wine, and Sophie ends up taking her to a restaurant with all the other secretaries of Juliet so she can meet everybody. And then at the restaurant, Claire tells the story of how she originally met Lorenzo. She was taking an art course. I believe she was a teenager, maybe 15 or 16, I think she says. And while she was taking the art course, she was staying with a family in Tuscany. And the family had a son named Lorenzo, and it was love at first sight. And she says Lorenzo gave her a ring that she still wears on a necklace. And they wanted to run away together to get married, but she had exams back in England, and she got scared and ran away. So she wants to find him now and apologize for being a coward at the time. And she tells them Charlie is driving her to Lorenzo's farm tomorrow.
I cannot believe that she still has that necklace after 50 years, and she brought it with her.
I know.
To go see him. Sophie runs after Claire and Charlie after dinner and asks if she can come with them to find Lorenzo. Sophie tells Claire she'd love to write about her story, and Claire says she'd love it if Sophie came.
And then we cut to their road trip. On the trip, Sophie asks Claire all about Lorenzo, and Claire also talks about her husband, who she says believed that love was merely hormones. So we immediately can tell the difference in how Claire feels about both of these guys. And then Claire asks Sophie about her fiancé, and Sophie says that Victor's an amazing chef and that he's at a wine auction. And we can tell that she isn't super excited to talk about him and kind of cuts their conversation short. But during their conversation, we also find out that Sophie's mom left her when she was 9.
Sad. Sophie, Claire, and Charlie arrive at Lorenzo's farm. Claire knocks on the door and says she's worried he won't remember her. An older man comes outside and Claire asks for Lorenzo, and he says that's him, but Claire isn't convinced. She says he doesn't have Lorenzo's eyes. Charlie asks the man what he was doing in the summer of 1957, and he says he met a beautiful blonde girl and they married, but then he goes on a rant about how much he hates that woman. They run back to the car laughing and realize that they went to the wrong Lorenzo Bartolini's house. And this will be a trend because it turns out there are going to be a lot of Lorenzo Bartolinis.
Yeah. So they go back to their hotel and they sit by the pool to look up all the different Lorenzo Bartolinis in Tuscany. And it turns out there are 74 of them.
Wow.
But Sophie says not to worry, she can use her fact-finding skills from work to help them narrow down the list. And then Sophie and Charlie continue to bicker. But then as he walks away to get into the pool, we see her eyeing him. So it's kind of that mean to each other, but there's something there vibe between the two of them. What did you think about their dynamic?
He was kind of mean throughout the whole beginning, but I knew this was the enemies to lovers trope right away.
Yeah.
So I kind of just prepared myself for it and I liked it, honestly.
Yeah.
But if anyone treated me like that in real life, I would not like them.
Agreed.
Sophie calls Victor to tell her about her adventure, and as she starts talking, Victor cuts her off for the millionth time. He says he's busy and has to get back to the auction, and he also says he has to stay until Friday. So it actually kind of works out for Sophie because she can definitely go on this trip without feeling guilty.
Mm-hmm. And then they're off. Claire, Charlie, and Sophie decide they're going to find the right Lorenzo. And so we see this series of scenes where she's meeting different Italian men that aren't the right ones. Where Claire just takes a look at them and then turns back to Charlie and Sophie and just shakes her head no. It's pretty funny.
It's so funny. The thing I love too is that all of them are instantly in love with Claire. That night at dinner, Charlie talks about his work helping refugees, and Sophie says she's surprised because she didn't expect him to be a save-the-world type. Claire excuses herself to go to bed, leaving Sophie and Charlie to talk.
Which is totally on purpose, by the way.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing.
She's
this whole
trying to
time.
do this. Uh-huh.
The ultimate wing woman.
Yeah.
But after a minute or so, Charlie says he wants to go to bed too and leaves. And then as he's leaving, he stops and he says, "Forgive me, where are my manners?" And Sophie says, "I've been wondering that since I met you." Charlie says he doesn't know why, but Sophie seems to bring out the worst in him and then offers to walk Sophie to her room. On their walk, Sophie says she has a great feeling about Claire finding Lorenzo.
And then the next day, they take Claire to meet another Lorenzo, but it still isn't him. And that night back at the hotel, Charlie actually goes to Sophie's room to ask if she wants to join them for dinner, but she says that she's working on her story and she doesn't have time. This, I feel is the first time we see Charlie, reaching out to Sophie.
Yeah.
So this is actually kind of cute. This was the first time I actually kind of started to like Charlie. I want to tell you more about what I think about Charlie later on because I don't want to spoil everything that's going to happen, but I don't love him until I start to warm up to him at this point.
Yeah, I felt kind of the same way. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
So then once Sophie says that she can't go to dinner because she's working on her story, Charlie asks if he can read some of it, and they have this cute bantery conversation about that, and then she ultimately just kicks him out.
At breakfast the next day, Charlie tells Sophie that Claire is sleeping in, but he's going to explore Siena. And kind of reluctantly, Sophie says she'll go with him. And while they're out, Charlie tells Sophie that his parents died in a car accident when he was 10 and he was raised by his grandmother. And that's why he's not a big believer in happy endings.
I think this is supposed to explain his surly rudeness. Yeah.
I don't know if it does, but...
No, I don't know if it does either. But it definitely endears us to him.
Yeah, we'll give him that.
So then on their walk, Charlie says that he broke up with his girlfriend about a year ago, and then also asks Sophie if her fiancé is getting lonely since she's been gone for so many days. And she says no, he's probably having the time of his life. The two of them get ice cream, and Sophie lets Charlie read some of her writing, and he's very impressed. And he tells her that she's definitely not a fact checker, she's a writer, and that she shouldn't be afraid to show people her work. And then they start shoving ice cream in each other's faces and laughing. And I actually thought this moment was so cute.
Yeah, this is where it totally changes. And you're like, okay, they've got some chemistry. He really cares about her writing, which is very important to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cute. Then they're off to meet more Lorenzos. And they meet 3 more, but none of them are the right one. That night, Sophie and Charlie grab a drink together. And Sophie asks if he believes in destiny. And he ends up asking her that question right back. She says, I think I do. I think it's destiny that I'm here right now with Claire. Charlie's face falls a little bit because you know he was expecting her to say with you.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, of course, with Claire.
On the drive the next day, we see Sophie and Charlie smiling at each other through the rearview mirror, and they just like kind of have these little moments throughout the day. And they stop at the next Lorenzo's house and find out that this Lorenzo has passed away. So they don't know that it's the wrong one. They just know that he obviously isn't with us anymore. And Charlie freaks out and says that this is what he was the most worried about. And he tells Sophie that Claire already lost Lorenzo once and he doesn't want her to lose him again. And then he makes this comment to Sophie that she doesn't know a thing about real loss, and Sophie runs away.
It's so sad because he had a point up until that last comment.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you can understand why he's trying to protect his grandma.
Totally.
From disappointment. But yeah, that was out of line. Sophie walks away and Claire tells Charlie that Sophie's mom left her when she was young. Basically, she's saying that she does know real loss. And Charlie says it's different. And Claire says he's right, but that Sophie's mom chose to leave her, whereas Charlie has always known his parents loved him.
Once again, I just love Claire.
She's great. She can really read a room.
Mm-hmm. She's like very emotionally with it.
We love that.
Yeah. Which Charlie needs. Charlie needs somebody to like check him like that. That night, Claire goes to Sophie's room to see if she's all right. Sophie apologizes and says she hopes that she hasn't caused Claire any pain with this search. And Claire says that every minute of it has been special. And then they have this really sweet moment together where Claire brushes Sophie's hair. And Claire says, one of the great joys in life is having one's hair brushed. And I agree.
I 100% agree. It's the best.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like Sophie has really not had anyone brush her hair since her mom left.
Yeah. It's a really, really cute moment.
And it's very sweet. The next day at lunch, Charlie apologizes to Sophie, and he gets some coaching from Claire, which I actually didn't like that part. I was like, you can't just say you're sorry. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Then Claire makes a toast to thank Sophie for doing such a wonderful thing for a complete stranger, and Sophie thanks them for letting her come on their adventure. So all is kind of forgiven.
And that night, Sophie finds Charlie laying on the grass looking up at the sky, and she lays with him and they talk for a while. And Charlie says, it's nearly tomorrow and I don't want to go. And then they stare at each other and then they kiss. And Sophie, like, you can tell she feels weird about it right after, so she gets up and leaves. But we see Claire at her window above, just like watching them and smiling. What did you think of this kiss?
Mixed feelings, because I could understand why she kind of panicked and left, because she was like, I'm engaged.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I understand why it happened. So I don't know. What do you think?
I just wish that we saw like more of a real love story between the two of them.
That's fair.
Like, I feel like we were always headed here, and it's obvious that we were headed here, but I don't think, like, we got the cute moment of them, like, putting ice cream in each other's face, but it felt like we went from zero to that to the kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like, I don't get why it feels so worth it for somebody that it seems as, like, logical as Sophie to, like, risk an engagement to somebody that she really cares about with this, like, dude that's kind of a dickhead to her. And, like, they do have chemistry, but it doesn't seem, I don't know. I just wish that we got like a couple more like short scenes of them that were like really cute, you know?
Yeah, I could see that. They are on this super emotional journey together, and I do feel like it's believable, but if we had more scenes, maybe there were some deleted ones.
Yeah, I don't
know, but you have a point. The next morning, they're all packing the car to leave, and Claire asks Sophie to sit in the front seat with Charlie so she can stretch her legs. As they drive, Claire looks back and forth between Sophie and Charlie, and they're not talking. They pass a vineyard for their favorite wine brand, and Claire tells Charlie to pull in so they can have a goodbye toast.
She's like buying them time. She's like, oh no, they need to fix this because I want them to be together before Claire leaves. So anyway, they pull into the winery, and Claire yells for Charlie to stop the car, and she gets out and looks at this young man who's picking grapes, and she says, that's Lorenzo. But he's like probably in his 20s. And so Sophie goes up to the young man and asks if he knows Lorenzo Bartolini, and the young man says, oh, that's my name. And Charlie is like putting all of this together and says that that must be Lorenzo's grandson. But then as they're talking, Claire tells them to come back to the car. And she was like, sorry, I'm being ridiculous. There's no way Lorenzo's going to remember me. She's like getting cold feet. She's like terrified of like how this could actually go now that it's a possibility. And she says, he knew me as a girl and that girl is long gone.
I can relate to that panic that she has.
Like the idea of it is like so romantic and fun. But then when you're like, oh my God, I actually think this is his property. It's like, oh no. What have I done?
And then for her to actually see his grandson who looks exactly like he did when she knew him, that must be really nerve-wracking.
Totally.
And then we see an older gentleman ride up to them on a horse, and he gets off, and he and Claire stare at each other. And then he recognizes her. He touches her face, and they smile and they hug. And it's so sweet, and you can tell that they both have felt the same way about each other this whole time.
Yeah, it's so cute. Also, this is their real life story.
Except 40 years instead of 50.
Yeah, I'm dying. I love that. Especially because if they got back together in 2006, they probably would have filmed this in like 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been pretty soon after they got back together. And that's just, I love it.
Yeah, and maybe they're good actors, so I bet it would have been great anyway. But I wonder if that's why it has a little extra sparkle. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it feels
you can
very
feel
genuine.
the connection between them, yeah.
Yes.
So then Claire, Sophie, and Charlie have lunch with Lorenzo and his whole family at the vineyard. And at lunch, Lorenzo gives a toast and says, I went for a ride this morning as an old man and came home as a teenager again. And he talks about how Claire lost, quote, her Jack, and he lost his Rosa. And he says it's destiny that they met again. And then when he sits down, Claire says, I'm sorry I was late. Which is like, for some reason, it's giving The Notebook to me because it's like so, that sentence is like so heavy because she's saying like, I'm sorry that it took me so long to figure this out. I'm sorry that I ever left, blah, 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 you know? So she says, I'm sorry I was late. And he says, no, when speaking about love, it's never too late.
Aww. Wait, can you imagine though if she had come to him and he had still been married and his wife hadn't passed away? That would have been awkward.
Really awkward. Charlie is right that there are so many ways this could have gone wrong.
So many.
Yeah.
After lunch, Charlie and Sophie talk, and Charlie makes her promise to finish the story that she's writing. As they talk, they can see Claire and Lorenzo walking together in the vineyard. Charlie apologizes for kissing Sophie, and she just looks kind of sad and says, it's time to go. Goodbye, Charlie. I'll miss you. She runs over to Claire and Lorenzo and says she needs to go. Lorenzo says his son can drive her wherever she needs to go.
And Sophie starts to tear up as she's talking to Claire, and Claire asks her what's wrong, and she says nothing. And then they hug while Claire thanks her. But you can tell there's sort of this understanding between them that it's like something about Charlie and Victor and just the whole situation.
After Sophie drives away, Claire looks at Charlie and says, darling, you're family, so I think you'll understand why I'm telling you you're a total idiot. How many Sophies do you think there are on this planet? Don't wait 50 years like I did. Go.
This is my favorite part of the whole movie.
It's so great.
I just love like the full circleness of Claire being like, I allowed what you're about to allow and I regret it. And you're like watching me go try to undo that when you have the opportunity to just never make that mistake in the first place. And I just love their relationship is really cute. And her just being like, you're a total idiot. Go get in a car.
And I like that she's stopping the generational cycle of it with someone else.
Totally. And so he does go. He gets in the car and he drives after her. And when he gets back to Verona and pulls up in his car, he sees Sophie and Victor hugging on their balcony. And this breaks him inside because he's like, I think he was just expecting to not see the two of them together and for Sophie to still be upset and want to be with him. And he's worked it up in his mind, you know? And so he sees them together and he turns back to the car and Charlie drives away. But then as soon as he drives away, we see Victor get a phone call and walk away from Sophie. And we see Sophie just staring down at the street where Charlie just was. And she just looks so sad.
It sucks. I hate this.
Very ships in the night.
Then we're back in New York, and Sophie is in her boss's office, and he's reading her story. By the way, did you recognize her boss?
No, I don't think so.
He's Uncle in The Bear.
Oh, I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah, in The Bear. I think Cicero is his name.
Yeah.
I don't remember his first name. But yeah, I loved seeing him in this. He's reading her story, and he says it's good, and he's going to publish it. But he also asks what happened to the couple and to Charlie, and she says she didn't keep in touch, which is sad.
Sad. But then Sophie walks out of her work building and she's so excited. You can tell this was her first story, I'm pretty sure. I think this was the first one she ever brought to her boss, and the fact that he liked it makes her so excited. So she walks over to Victor's restaurant and she tells him that her story is getting printed, and then she asks if he read it because she left it out for him, but he says he didn't get to it, but he'll just read it when it comes out.
I want to snap him with his rubber band noodles.
Yeah, it's really sad because you can just see her disappointment. She's like, oh, I left it out for you. What did you think? Did you read it? And he made it sound almost like, oh, it'll be better if I buy it when it comes out. You know, that's better for us. That's better for everybody. But it's just Dude, you're just not trying.
And you know he wouldn't actually read it once it's printed either.
Yeah.
It was just an excuse. The next morning at the office, Sophie gets messages and a letter. Love Story by Taylor Swift starts playing, and Sophie sits in the park and opens Claire and Lorenzo's wedding invitation. It came with Claire's original letter from 50 years ago. And I love that Claire sent it back to her.
Cute, I know. And the Love Story by Taylor Swift is playing. It's perfect.
Do you think that she attached that letter because she was like, I need to add something a little more personal that's going to remind her of how important it is that she be here?
Yeah.
So that she can reunite with my grandson?
Yeah, I do. And I think it was just sort of like she got her Lorenzo back, so she doesn't need it anymore.
Aw, that's cute.
Mm-hmm. But I think it was a nudge to be like, same thing that she did with Charlie, like, don't let this happen to you, you know?
Yeah, and she knows that the letter means something to Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
So we cut to Victor's restaurant, where he's running around in a super busy kitchen, and Sophie walks right into the back and tells Victor that Lorenzo and Claire are getting married this Saturday and that she's going to go alone. And Victor immediately stops what he's doing and asks everyone to leave the kitchen. And Sophie says she doesn't really know what they're doing anymore. They went on vacation and didn't spend any time together. And Victor says he didn't mind that they didn't spend any time together. And she's basically is just like, exactly, we went on a honeymoon and we didn't want to spend time together. And Victor says he wishes he could tell her it would be different, but this is who he is. And Sophie says she loves who he is, but that she's changed and this isn't working anymore. And then they hug and she leaves. And as soon as she leaves, the music, the Love Story by Taylor Swift, picks back up again. It's perfect.
How did I not anticipate that this song would play in this movie?
I didn't either. When it started, I think I gasped. I was like, this is perfect.
It is so perfect. We see a plane land and Sophie driving through the Italian countryside. She walks into the wedding and she looks gorgeous. Charlie walks up to her and says she looks beautiful. And he says she'll have to stay with them at Lorenzo's tonight. As Sophie starts to respond, a woman named Patricia comes up to Charlie, and Charlie introduces the two, and it's clear that Patricia is his date or his girlfriend.
So then Sophie, seeing this, you can tell she's just like kind of upset, and she excuses herself from their conversation because it's obviously not what she was expecting. And so she goes inside and she talks to the secretaries of Juliet, who are all there. And then the wedding starts, and Charlie walks Claire down the aisle. It's so cute. And Claire reaches out to Sophie when they pass her.
I loved that. We cut to the reception. Lorenzo stands up to say thank you, and then Claire gets up and tells the story of how she wrote a letter 50 years ago and received a reply 2 months ago. Claire reads part of Sophie's response, and I also like that she asks Sophie first if she can read it.
Yeah.
And here's the response. What and if are two words as non-threatening as words can be, but put them together side by side, and they have the power to haunt you for the rest of your life. We see Charlie look over at Sophie. Claire keeps reading. If I ever had a love like Juliet, I'd like to believe I'd have the courage to seize it. And Claire, if you didn't, I hope that one day you will.
Cute.
Yay.
And so Sophie gets emotional hearing this, and she leaves her table, and Charlie immediately gets up and runs after her. And he runs into the courtyard of the venue, kind of away from everybody else, and Sophie walks out onto a balcony, obviously. And she says she's going to leave, and she tells Charlie that she and Victor broke up, and that she came back because she was hopeful, but that she can see now it was too late. And then she tells Charlie that she loves him, but that she knows that he's with Patricia, so it doesn't matter.
Charlie cuts her off to say that Patricia is his cousin.
I died when this happened.
Then he says, well, there's two Patricias, my cousin and one that I've completely forgotten about. But there's only one Sophie. This made me feel bad for Patricia, the girlfriend.
I know. It also made me kind of confused because he said the cousin thing, and then I was like, oh, funny. And then I realized, oh, no, there is a Patricia girlfriend.
Like, that was his girlfriend,
he
not his
just
cousin.
doesn't care, yeah.
Yeah. Then he takes off his suit jacket and climbs the vine up to the balcony, and he says that he's in love with her too. He climbs up to kiss her, but he falls off the vine, and she runs down to help him, and he says, please tell me nobody saw that. Sophie looks up and sees that Claire and Lorenzo are watching them, but tells him no one saw, and then they kiss. And then everyone else from the wedding comes to watch them kissing on the ground, including Patricia.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I think as the credits are starting, you just see like the mob follow Claire and Lorenzo over to watch them. It's very weird.
It is odd, but it was a great way to end the movie.
Still sweet, yeah.
And that's the end. Yay.
Yay! I loved it. I really loved this movie. I thought it was so cute and like so lighthearted and fun. But I still am just like, I just don't buy the Charlie Sophie love story. I'm like, I think she just was so unhappy in her relationship that like the idea of this like being swept up by this like English guy in the Italian countryside was just like, I don't know.
I could see that though. I think you're right. I think there needed to be some nicer scenes of them falling in love kind of in between. And maybe if they had toned down the mean scenes at the beginning, maybe we would have felt that progression a little bit more.
I wish we had gotten the full like Chris Pine and Hathaway treatment in Princess Diaries 2: The Royal Engagement.
I haven't seen that movie in so long.
Okay, where she's engaged. You've seen it, right?
Yes.
Okay, spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear about this, skip forward like 30 seconds. But where she's engaged to Andrew and he's like the smart choice.
Right.
But then Chris Pine comes around and they like kind of hate each other and they bicker a lot, but there's like so much sexual tension. And then they like really fall in love, but it happens quickly. Like they can do it in not that many scenes and you really buy it. I like really wish we got more of that.
That's right.
Because I could see what they're trying to do. And I actually don't mind the enemies to lovers trope that much. I just wish there was more of the transition, you know?
Yeah, and I think you're right. There wasn't really a lot of sexual tension. There was just like one moment where she looked at him while he got in the pool or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. I think you've kind of convinced me, but I still really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was really fun. I think I was in the mood for something super lighthearted. And yeah, I think it's one of those movies that if you're in the mood for it, it is a really good one.
Yeah, it's a really cutesy rom-com. I'm into it.
And perfect for summer. Thank you guys so much for recommending that we watch it.
Yeah, it was a really good one to add to our list. If you guys have any other suggestions, especially as we head closer and closer to like back to school season, please message them to us on Instagram because I love hearing what movies you guys are watching and what you want us to cover. It's really fun.
Yeah, and we love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for listening.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.